They say home is where the heart is. It's a lovely sentiment really, but if you grow up in Britain anywhere between 1970 and 1990, you know the actual truth. Home wasn't where the heart was. Home was where the hypothermia was. Today we live in a world of smart thermostats, underfloor heating and double glazing that actually works. We walk around in t-shirts in December. We have forgotten the struggle. But deep down, in the back of your mind, the memory is still there. So today, we are going to do something dangerous. We are unlocking the heavy, frosted glass front door of memory. We're stepping back into what I call the ghost house. This isn't a specific house, it is every house. It's the semi-detached in the suburbs, it's the terraced house in the north. It is a museum of beige, a temple of patterned carpets, and a place where the laws of physics, specifically thermodynamics, seem to work in reverse. You remember it, don't you? The sensation of waking up and seeing your own breath in the bedroom air. The complex military strategy required just to go to the toilet in the middle of the night without freezing to death. The smells. That unique cocktail of damp wool, stale cigarette smoke and Sunday roast cabbage that seemed to be boiled for 3 consecutive days. We didn't have open-plan living back then. Open-plan was a luxury for people who could afford to heat more than one room. No, we lived in compartments. We lived in zones of survival. We had the warm room and we had the rest of the house, which was essentially the Arctic Circle with a roof. But this journey isn't just about the cold, it's about the ingenuity. It's about the things we've lost, the 30 features, habits and objects that defined a generation and then simply vanished. Some we miss, some we are very glad to see the back of. So put on your thickest jumper. Maybe put on 2. Make sure you've got 50p for the electric meter. We're going inside. You step over the threshold and close the front door behind you. Instinctively, you wait for the warmth to hit you, but it doesn't, because you are standing in the hallway. In the modern world, a hallway is just a corridor. In the 1970s, it was an airlock. A neutral zone between the cruel outside world and the slightly less cruel living room. Look down at your feet. There he is, the guardian of the gate, the draft excluder, usually shaped like a snake or a very depressed dachshund with tartan ears. His job was to stop the gale force winds whistling under the door gap. He was always heavy, filled with sawdust or perhaps old sand, and covered in a layer of dust that predated the Falklands War. He didn't stop the cold really, he just filtered the draft so it hit your ankles with more precision. Now, look at the walls. You don't just see this wallpaper, you feel it. This is anaglypta, or if your dad was feeling particularly DIY adventurous, wood chip. It looks less like decoration and more like someone painted over a wall covered in calcified porridge. It was indestructible. It was also a weapon. If you brushed your arm against a wood chip wall too quickly, you'd lose a layer of skin. And admit it, if you were sent to stand in the corner as a punishment, you spent the entire time picking at those little chips of wood, leaving tiny white scars on the beige landscape. High on the wall near the ceiling sits the box. The Westminster chimes. Not a simple ding-dong doorbell. Oh no, that was for peasants. This was a long electronic performance of Big Ben that announced a visitor with the gravity of a royal proclamation. When that thing went off, the whole house froze. Who could it be? The vicar? The Avon lady? Or the man from the Prue? But the centerpiece of this freezing corridor is undoubtedly the telephone table, a piece of furniture designed by someone who hated the human spine. This was the Communication HQ. It had a padded seat, a shelf for the yellow pages, and a little drawer for a notepad that never had a working pen. It looks quaint now, doesn't it? But remember the reality. The phone was hardwired to the wall. You couldn't walk around. If you wanted to talk to your boyfriend or girlfriend, you had to do it right here, in the freezing cold, with your mum hovering in the kitchen doorway and your dad shouting, "Who is it?" from the living room every 30 seconds. There was no privacy, just you, the freezing cold, and a curled telephone cord that had tangled itself into a knot so tight even Alexander the Great couldn't undo it. You didn't linger here. The hallway was for transit, not for loitering. So let's move towards the light, towards the heat, towards the living room. Pushing open the living room door feels like opening an oven. This was the warm room, the only warm room. In the geography of the 1970s home, this was the sanctuary. The entire family life was compressed into this one 12 by 12 square of heat and patterned fabric. Domineering the room like a pagan altar was the fire. It was usually a gas fire mounted on a slab of slate or fake marble. It didn't look like a fire. It looked like a scientific experiment from a Soviet laboratory. It had ceramic radiance that glowed with a terrifying intense orange. When you first lit it, foot whoosh, it made a sound that suggested it was thinking about exploding, just to keep you on your toes. And if you were posh, maybe you had the coal effect fire with those fake fireproof lumps that never burned down, but slowly gathered a layer of soot that looked suspiciously like human dust. Behind it, you might hear the deep, ominous rumble of the back boiler, the mechanical heart trying to pump a teaspoon of lukewarm water to the radiators upstairs. We huddled around this thing. We toasted bread on it with a long fork, risking third-degree burns for a slice of Hovis. We dried our clothes on a metal airer in front of it, so the whole room smelled of steaming damp wool and fabric conditioner. Facing the fire was the other god of the household, the television. But not just the television. This was a piece of furniture. It was the size of a small car, encased in wood veneer, and it weighed about the same as a fridge. And chances are, you didn't own it. You rented it, from Radio Rentals or Granada. Remember the panic? The picture starts to roll or the colour goes weirdly green and Dad has to smack the side of it to fix the vertical hold. And for many of us, there was the meter, the hungry little box on the back of the set. You'd be watching the Generation Game, Bruce Forsyth is about to reveal the scores, and suddenly, click, darkness, silence. 50p! Who's got a 50p? The frantic scramble through purses and down the back of the sofa, praying you could find a coin before the show finished. It taught us economic management better than any school lesson. No coin, no culture. There was no remote control, of course. Well, that's not strictly true. You were the remote control. Go and turn it over to BBC Two, your dad would say from the depths of his armchair. And you'd get up, walk across the room, and push a button that required the finger strength of a rock climber. Clunk. You'd sit back down on the sofa. The sofa, usually upholstered in Dralon, a synthetic fabric that possessed a unique property. It generated enough static electricity to power a small village. If you wriggled too much and then touched your sibling's ear, there was a visible spark. And over in the corner, the Holy of Holies, the glass display cabinet, also known as the sideboard. This was a museum of things that were too good to actually use. The best china plates, permanently on display, the crystal glasses that would shatter if you looked at them wrong, and the alcohol. A bottle of Avocado, a bottle of Harvey's cream, and something bright blue that someone brought back from Spain in 1974. Nobody drank them, they just sat there gathering dust, waiting for the vicar or a wedding. The living room was cluttered, it was overheated, and the air was thick.
but it was the gravitational center of the universe. We all sat there facing the same way, watching the same 3 channels, sharing the same static shocks. It was cramped, but God, it was warm. Leaving the tropical heat of the living room, we head into the engine room, the kitchen. Modern kitchens are living spaces. They have islands, espresso machines, and ambient lighting. The 1970s kitchen was different. It was a place of culinary violence. It was orange, it was brown, and everything was covered in formica. If you close your eyes, you can smell it immediately, that lingering scent of boiled vegetables and lard. Because sitting on the stove, like an unexploded bomb, was the chip pan.
Before air fryers, before oven chips, we had this cast iron pot filled with solid white animal fat. You'd light the gas, wait for the fat to melt into a lethal boiling liquid, and then lower a wire basket of wet potatoes into it. Hiss. The noise was deafening, the steam was blinding, and the danger was real. Every British child knew the drill. Don't touch the handle. It was the leading cause of house fires, yet we used it every Tuesday for tea. The chips tasted of grease and danger. Delicious. In the corner, vibrating across the linoleum floor, was the beast, the twin tub. Young people today think doing laundry is just pressing a button. They don't know the physical workout of the twin tub. It was a washing machine that required your full participation. You washed the clothes in one tub, then, using a pair of giant wooden tongs, you dragged the wet, heavy laundry into the spinner next to it. You had to balance the load perfectly. If you didn't, the machine would start to scream and walk across the kitchen floor like a Dalek having a seizure. You had to physically restrain it. Laundry day wasn't a chore, it was a wrestling match. And on the counter, the Sodastream, the height of sophistication. Get busy with the fizzy, the advert said. It sounded like a jet engine taking off. And the result? A glass of cola that tasted vaguely of chemicals and disappointment. But we drank it like it was champagne because we made it ourselves. Now, look at the wall connecting to the dining room, or the living room. There it is, the serving hatch. A small wooden window with sliding glass doors. The ultimate architectural expression of, I want to feed you, but I don't want to look at you. It was designed to keep cooking smells in the kitchen, but mostly it was used for pranks. It was a puppet theatre. It was a guillotine for the unwary cat. But on Sundays, it was the portal through which the roast beef arrived, framed like a masterpiece, before the hatch was slammed shut to hide the pile of dirty pans behind it. The kitchen wasn't glamorous. It was loud, it was greasy, and it was hard work. But it was the only place in the house where you could find a biscuit tin that wasn't strictly rationed, if you were quiet enough. We climb the stairs. Careful, the carpet is slippery with nylon static. At the top of the landing, we find the room that time and good taste forgot. The bathroom. If you are lucky, it is coral pink. If you are unlucky, it is whispering grey. But if you are truly living the 1970s dream, it is one colour and one colour only. Avocado. The Avocado bathroom suite. The bath, the sink, the toilet, all in a shade of green that resembles a bruised vegetable. It was the ultimate status symbol. It said, look at Lee, I am modern, I am sophisticated, I am vaguely nauseating. And it wasn't just the ceramics, oh no. Look at the floor. Yes, that is carpet. In the 1970s, we decided that cold tiles were for hospitals, so we put carpet in the bathroom, deep shag pile carpet, right next to the toilet. Just think about that for a second. Think about the hygiene, think about the damp. Stepping out of the bath onto a soggy, mildew-scented rug was a sensation that stays with you for life. It was a sponge for everything you didn't want to think about. The bath itself was cast iron and cold enough to freeze time. You had to run the hot water for 10 minutes just to warm the metal up. And the taps? 2 separate taps, one dispensing boiling lava, the other dispensing liquid nitrogen. Mixing them was physically impossible. You had to frantically splash water between your hands, choosing which degree of pain you preferred. But there was one redeeming feature on the landing: the airing cupboard. This was the engine room of the upstairs. Inside was the hot water tank, wrapped in an orange jacket like a fat man in a puffer coat. This was the driest, warmest place in the known universe. It smelled of warm towels and washing powder. It was where the cat slept. It was where you played hide and seek and fell asleep because it was so cozy. If the house was an igloo, the airing cupboard was the campfire. But we can't stay in here forever. It's time to face the final challenge. The coldest place on earth. The bedroom. We leave the sanctuary of the airing cupboard and sprint across the landing to the bedroom. Entering a British bedroom in 1979 was not like entering a room, it was like entering a cryo chamber. Central heating usually didn't reach up here. The radiator was stone cold, or worse, there wasn't one at all. The first thing you noticed in the morning wasn't the sunlight, it was the patterns. Beautiful, intricate fern-like patterns of ice on the inside of the window. We didn't have double glazing, we had a single pane of glass separating us from the North Sea wind. You could actually scrape your name into the ice before you got out of bed. It was physically impossible to leave the bed, so you just lay there, watching your own breath form little clouds in the air, like a Victorian chimney. And the bed itself? A geological dig of layers. This was before the continental duvet arrived to save us all. We had sheets. Specifically, nylon sheets that crackled with static electricity and stuck to your legs. Then the cellular blanket, that holy blanket with the holes in it designed to trap air, but mostly just trapped your toes. And on top of it all, the eider down, a shiny pink satin beast filled with feathers. It was heavy. So heavy that once you were under it, you were pinned down. You couldn't roll over. You just lay there, crushed by the weight of sleep, trapped in a satin coffin. On the bedside table sat the most terrifying gadget known to man, the goblin Teasmade. It was an alarm clock combined with a kettle, a device that believed the best way to wake you up was to boil a pint of water 3 inches from your face. It would hiss, gurgle, and then, with a violent click, shoot boiling water into a ceramic pot. Waking up in the 70s was like waking up in a steam engine room, but it was considered the height of luxury. Tea in bed without moving a muscle. We slept in flannelette pajamas. We wore bed socks. We put hot water bottles in the bed an hour before we got in, and getting into a cold patch of the sheet was a shock to the system that could restart a stopped heart. It was brutal. It was freezing, but it was the best sleep you ever had. And so we stepped back out into the street. We closed that heavy door. The ghost house fades back into the mist. We look back at these objects, the coal chutes, the lethal chip pans, the avocado bathrooms, and we laugh. We shudder at the inconvenience. We wonder how we didn't burn the house down or freeze to death before our 10th birthday. But here is the irony. The central heating was terrible, yes. The windows had ice on the inside. But because the house was cold, we had to be together. We huddled in that one warm living room. We shared the one phone in the hallway. We ate together because the food had to pass through that tiny serving hatch. The lack of comfort created a surplus of connection. We were forced into proximity. The ghost house is gone now, replaced by open-plan living, underfloor heating, and Wi-Fi in every room. It's better, undeniably better.
I wouldn't trade my duvet for a scratchy blanket for £1,000,000. But sometimes, in the quiet hum of a modern, perfectly heated room, do you ever miss the noise, the chaos, the warmth that came from people, not radiators? I want to know your story. What is the one smell or the one object that instantly transports you back to your childhood home? Was it the smell of paraffin, the sound of the twin tub walking across the floor, or the terror of the outside toilet? Let me know in the comments below. I read them all. And if you enjoyed this tour of the past, please like and subscribe. It keeps the heating on here at the Nostalgia Brit HQ. Until next time, mind the draft